All right, guys, so we're going live again. I know last week we had some troubles with the video kind of catching up at the start. So if there's any of those issues going on again, just let me know. And then if it is happening, just tell me it's working again like you guys did last week. Glad to see we got some people in here right away. Thanks, Josh, for becoming a patron. Hopefully we can keep cashing with you this week. Should be a good week with this major. Got a good cash lineup going in that. Let's kick off the video right away. All right. So just gonna be going over, kind of just the feel of this week. Always do the first video as an initial kind of video, and when a major comes around, you kind of gotta rethink, retool the thought process slightly. One thing that I decided to put into my stats was bogey avoidance and then bounce back birdie or bounce back percentage. And I kind of replaced that with birdie or better percentage. Now I do want to look at those because I do think that stat will be indicative of who will actually do well and most likely top 10. So that's what I'm looking at. But let's kick it off here with the high tier plays. I'm not going to touch on everyone. I'm just going to go over the plays that I like the most. I already touched on most of these plays in the core plays video. But the first one I want to touch on is actually going to be Patrick Cantlay. So the one thing that stood out about Patrick Cantlay, and I'll touch on this one a little bit more too on the next slide here, was his bogey avoidance. He's one of the best players in the field in bogey avoidance. And if that's going to be a key stat this week, like we kind of think it is, that's going to be great. And for someone like Patrick Cantlay, who will probably have to club down, he's currently 147th in fairways hit percentage. Now, if he's clubbing down, there's going to be a big difference there in that. So it shouldn't be a worry. But let's say he gets in trouble, he has a really strong bogey avoidance. So we do really like that about Patrick Cantlay. Now, the one thing about Patrick Cantlay is, I mentioned this on the Patreon page too, is he kind of seems like a better version of Xander Schauffele. He's had a better year, but they both had some pretty good years. They're both younger players, younger studs that play really well. And statistically, they're pretty much the same play. Xander's a little bit better at hitting the fairway off the tee, but other than that, their stats are very, very similar. So that's the one thing that I like about those two the most. And I think it's not really a pivot play because Xander's a lot cheaper, but Xander's one of those options down there in that below 9K range that not many people are talking about. And I bring this up because, like I said, he's very similar to Cantlay. Now, he hasn't won like Cantlay has, but other than that, they're pretty similar plays. You look at the people around Xander, you got Francesco Molinari, Tommy Fleetwood, Hideki, Scott, Kuchar, Finau, Casey. I mean, those guys are all good options. But I think Xander's going to be a low GPP owned play, so we do like that. The one play I do want to touch on too as well is also going to be Justin Thomas. So we mentioned last week that he was injured, and we thought that his game was coming around. We thought that he was going to have a decent week, but it was more of a GPP option. We couldn't play it in cash, that's for sure. He ended up having a pretty good week last week. He is one of the better Stafford's in the field, so if you want to take that risk in GPPs, you can. I've actually ended up in that range on a couple of builds, and I don't really like going with Rahm. Day's all right. I like the option of Day, but I've had a little bit too much Jason Day in my builds as well. I don't want to have too much of him, so I end up just going with Justin Thomas because I couldn't get up to Ricky Fowler, and I just don't want to go with Molinari. And then most of those builds that I'm mentioning, I already had Fleetwood already in the build or Hideki in the build as well. So that's kind of how that went. And just for just a quick breakdown, I haven't really had any lineups where I've had double Brooks, DJ, Tiger, or Rory. The best I've been able to do is get one of those four and then go down to Ricky Fowler. That's the best I've been able to do and still have a pretty decent build. So that's kind of how it's looking now. If you get lucky with a couple of those value options down there, that's exactly what it's going to be. It's going to be lucky. So that's kind of why I'm not doing that this week. Typically in majors, DraftKings does kind of a bad job pricing. They didn't do that this year, so I do like that. Good kudos to DraftKings on that. Yahoo, I will mention some plays later on in the video. They struggled a little bit. There are some really strong plays that stood out on Yahoo at that minimum salary range. So we'll touch on that later on in the video like we always do. Then we'll also give you some FanDuel plays as well. Again, a little bit lower. Just some players I want to touch on before I highlight some actual plays a little bit later on. Adam Scott. So if we bring in bogey avoidance, that makes him even more of a stronger option this week. And it's been tough to decide. I'm trying to decide between Adam Scott and Paul Casey. And they're virtually the same play. I've been going with Paul Casey just because he does have that course history. Now, we're not weighing course history as much this week because the course is going to play a little bit different. But I think if you had that familiarity with the course, you're going to do a little bit better. And that's kind of was the break-even point for me. Although Scott does have the better recent form. So it's, that is a toss-up. In GPPs, I definitely have switched them both into the builds as well. And that's kind of where I like to do that tiering option with my cash lineup, where I'm changing it, one player at a time through my cash build in those big GPP lineups that I make. And that's kind of just one of the things that I did there. And then going a little bit lower, Gary Woodland, he's one of the best FFs in the field. Great GPP option this week. I think he's going to be a strong option just because if he does make the cut, that's most likely going to mean that he is having a strong week, and that's going to mean that he's going to at least top 20. So I do like that. Tiger and DJ Stack. I couldn't get it into the build there. Smoking Guns. I didn't like the line. I've tried to get 2 of those studs in the build because I do think that 2 of those 4 are easily going to top 10. It's just a matter of getting those into your builds, and you're kind of locking into top 10 plays. But I couldn't play them both with having the confidence that another player below was actually going to make the cut. So that's kind of my problem. Graeme McDowell. I am glad you mentioned Graeme McDowell. Let's pull him up. All right, so GMAC here. I actually really like this play, and this is a play he's kind of mispriced across the industry. They didn't really know that he was going to go out and dominate last week like we did. So the thing about GMAC, all right, we didn't know he was going to dominate. We thought he was a good cash play, so we played him in the cash lineup. We were teetering on it a little bit last week, but all in all, we knew that Graeme McDowell was going to have a good week. If you look at Graeme McDowell, he is one of the best golfers recent form-wise. He's a pretty decent stat fit. Now, Graeme McDowell, he hasn't really been a good stat fit at any course this whole year. He's just been finding ways to do it, and that's mostly been because of the putter. Now, he doesn't make that many bogeys, so we do like that. And he does have that course history. He actually won here in 2010. So that's what we do like. He does have decent course history. His current form is obviously great. Let me pull up his stats here real quick. Gotta find it. So I noticed last week the video was kind of lagging because I had the stats pulled up on my screen. And typically I don't. Typically I print them out. So I had to go back to the print off this week because it was slowing down the video production. So apologize for that last week, but we should be good now. Here we go, Graeme McDowell. So, obviously he's one of the best putters in the field. He is 36 in bogey avoidance, and all of his other stats are not that great. He's decent at fairways hit. He's decent at birdie or better percentage, and his par 5 scoring is not the best. His greens over regulation could be better as well, but overall he's not a bad play. Obviously he is in good form. You like Phil Mickelson? I can't do it. I hope he does well. Obviously, he has pretty good major and U.S. Open history. I can't do it with Phil this week. He could be the Shane Lowry this week, though, where I don't want to play him. I'm not going to have him in the player pool. The thing with Phil is he's like Graeme McDowell, where he kind of just finds a way to do well. Obviously, Phil has tremendous course history here, but that's just a play I can't go with. All right, so let's break it down a little bit more. We're going to talk about some of the mispriced plays, and then some of those. Normally, I like to have primary stats that we're looking at, secondary stats that we're looking at, and then every so often, I will bring in the last kind of baggage of stats that I want to look at. That's going to be hard fairways hit, hard greens and regulations hit, and also whatever the green type is that week. And I think generally that's how you should do it. I know some other people in the DFS industry like to focus on some of these stats a little bit more than they should, and that's mostly just because it's content, just to be honest with you guys. So Howell or Van Rooyen. So I can't go with Howell. I want to. He's one of the better stat fits in the field, but his form is just so bad. I can't play him. Van Rooyen is in good form, especially on Yahoo. Van Rooyen and on FanDuel, he's going to be a better option on those sites. He's a little bit cheaper there, so I do like him on there. But Howell, I just can't go with. So any GPP options? What price range are you looking for? I can give you some. Just comment that, and I'll give you guys some more. But some hard greens and regulations players. Obviously, DJ is good. You look at kind of those plotters, and it's kind of surprising. So DJ, he doesn't have a good fairways hit percentage, but that's why we kind of look at hard fairways hit, because typically when they're harder fairways, those bigger bombers, those guys, they can club down. And so someone like that would actually be Dustin, Bubba, and this is long term. This is dating back to like 2015. So obviously that's not like currently this season. So we're looking at long term, and I kind of like to do that because the hard fairway courses are mostly majors that they're playing in, and all those other types of events. So that's kind of where that stat comes from. So that's kind of why I look at that. But JT is one of those good hard fairway hitters. You look at someone like Paul Casey, he's decent. Lucas Glover's good. Stenson's good. So those are all decent options. Tiger Woods would be in this too as well. He just didn't have as much stats because of his injury, so we do like that. Greens and regulations hit that are hard. Ricky Fowler really stood out here. Stenson, Kuchar. Kuchar is one of the best stat fits across the board. The only reason why his price down was because he missed that cut the week before the U.S. Open pricing came out, and that's where it was kind of a blessing in disguise that he missed the cut that week. I do think he's going to be a popular option, which kind of sucks, but that's all right. Now, Tyrrell Hatton, you can see there on the Poana greens, he is actually a decent play overall. The only problem with Tyrrell Hatton is, over all the other plays that are in his price range, I've just been struggling to play him. He does make for a great GPP option, and like we really wouldn't be surprised if he went out and had a good week. But you look at the people that are around him that I would rather play. Emiliano Grillo. Well, let's start at the 7.5K range. Ian Poulter, Shane Lowry, Snedeker, Matthew Fitzpatrick, Grillo, McDowell, Rafa, Furyk. Then you get to Tyrrell Hatton. Billy Horschel is a decent option. And then a little bit lower, you have to go to the 7K range, where we get to Lucas Glover, Thomas Peters, Keegan Bradley, Ches, and also Scott Piercy. So that's kind of the difference there with those ones. So I like Dahmen a little bit. You know, he was a Monday qualifier. He's one of those plays. I don't think I can play him this week. But if he did do well, I would totally get it, and it would make sense. But I don't know if I can play him this week. If you have him in one build, one GPP lineup, I won't mind it. Overall, stat-wise, he was a top 50 stat fit, but I'm not sure I see the point in playing him. How contrarian? Those are going to be contrarian for a reason. Reed and Rahm, I answered you. I just can't play those guys. I do think if anyone's going to have a really good week, it would be Rahm. We know he's a world-class player. Sometimes these guys just sort of forget how to golf for a week or two, and then they bounce back and have a really good week. Heck, we saw it with Ricky Fowler 3 weeks ago. He had a horrible week, bounced back pretty well. We saw it with Tiger when he missed the cut at the PGA Championship. The next event, he had a really good week. Matt Kuchar, just 2 events ago. Rory, heck, he missed the cut and then went on to win the next event. So these world-class players, they eventually figure it out. I don't know about Sergio. Sergio's kind of a head case, and so is Rahm. All 3 of those guys are head cases that you mentioned there. That's my biggest worry with those guys, is they make a mistake and they're due to like compound that mistake, and that's just something I don't like to do, especially at these tougher courses. 69 price range on DraftKings. Yeah, so I can list you off some. I got asked this question on the Patreon page earlier. It was a little bit lower. I know there's some amateurs that people like, but they're not likely to make the cut. They're decent GPP options, but to predict that they're going to make the cut, you're pretty much just guessing, and I don't like to do that. So obviously Eric Van Rooyen, he's not a bad option that low. I think Johnny Vegas, good GPP option, not that likely to make the cut, but if he's playing well, he could easily go out in top 25. Affy Barnrat was actually a play that I did like a lot, GPP wise. Definitely not cash or anything like that, but if you played him in GPPs, I don't mind that option. I do think Joel Dahmen is actually one of the better options below 7K. I don't trust that. I have like 3 builds out of like 40 that dip this low. So that kind of sums that up for you guys. Joel Dahmen, not a bad option. Matt Jones, not a bad option. Harris English, if you want to ride that current form, he's been playing pretty decent. A little bit lower, Nick Taylor, Aaron Baddeley. Now, Aaron Baddeley is probably the play that I should touch on the most here. And, he's just in pretty good recent form. His stats are decent. It's most of his secondary stats that he's doing well in. Putting, he's a good putter. Birdie or better percentage was actually surprising, but most of Aaron Baddeley's stats are coming on easier courses, easier tournaments, so that's kind of why they're skewed. His bogey avoidance is actually what I really liked. He's top 20 in that as well. He's decent at hitting the fairway, so if I had to go with one option below 7K, it would probably be Aaron Baddeley. I don't love it, but that's kind of just the option we got to go with. Yeah, so in majors, I don't think you really have to worry about chalk too much. Now, this one, it kind of seems like there's a lot more players getting talked up that I like, that the rest of the people in the industry like, so I'm a little bit worried about that. Let's talk about Jim Furyk, though. We got to ask about that, and it kind of ties into this question. All right, so Jim Furyk. Jim Furyk is going to be one of the better plays on the board this week across the industry, across FanDuel, Yahoo, and DraftKings. He's one of the best stat fits in the field, top 20. And the reason why is he's a smart player. He knows how to play the course, and he goes out and plays it well. And I think, he's played well at the last few U.S. Opens as well. I just think Jim Furyk, I wanted to get him in my cash build, but I couldn't. Now, I easily could. I definitely made that change in some GPPs, and I'll give you the Patreons who subscribe or donate. I will give them the hint here. I went down from Stenson to Furyk to get someone else in there, so you guys can figure that out in the GPP build. I think that's going to be a decent option. And the reason why I went with Stenson is just because he's the better player overall, long term and short term. Now, Furyk, obviously, he's a good player. I just have more confidence that Henrik Stenson's going to make the cut over Furyk, although they're pretty much the same option. Furyk probably is a little bit better fit, but I just think overall Stenson's a much better player. Furyk, though, I do want to get him in my cash build, and I have a lot of him in GPPs. He's probably my most owned player in GPPs that isn't in my cash build currently, so that, if you play Jim Furyk, I wouldn't blame you. Obviously, he has that good course history, good ball striker, good total driver, great in fairways hit, second in that. He's top 10 in bogey avoidance, greens and regulations as well. So we do like him. The only problem with Furyk is he's not a long ball hitter, but that shouldn't really matter this week. Let's get into another play here that I want to bring up. It's kind of just another plotter, another guy that plays it smart, good putter. Pretty much the same play as Furyk or McDowell, just going to get it done, putting, and pretty much with them, they're just trying to hit the fairway and then get it to the green and then putt and dominate. Now, the thing about Snedeker is he does have pretty good course history. He did miss the cut here this year, and I think I had him in the player pool that week. I think I had him in pretty high owned that week when he missed the cut, so that was unfortunate. But other than that, he does have good course history. He's rolling, and he's kind of going unknown, or not talked about too much, just because the other great price or players in that price range. Look at that good current form there. I mean, that's just phenomenal. It's hard to get someone like that. Now, Shane Lowry, he also does have good course or current form similar to that, but overall, Snedeker is a much better play. And I think Snedeker is going to be lower owned than someone like Shane Lowry, so he's going to make for a decent option. Bold call. All right, hey, Smoking Guns, we'll hold you to that. If you get that one right again, that's gonna be a good call right there. Let's see. Final lineup in cash or picture. I think that's gonna be the final. I will try to make the update if there is gonna be one before 7. I have been trying to make a stronger cash build than that one, and it would be one that would feature Jim Furyk. I just can't. I was kind of trying to get to Adam Scott, but I just don't feel comfortable doing that. Going away from Paul Casey on that one. So that's kind of how that goes right now with the cash lineup on the Patreon page. If you wanted to do that, you could. That's just not going to be the route that I go this week. Yeah, DJ, I do like. That's not a bad strategy, going DJ, Tiger, Furyk. I think DJ, just if I had to pick one of the 4 on the top, if I had to, I would go with DJ. Just overall, he has that course history, great U.S. Open history, best overall stat fit. We know he can club down if he needs to and hit the fairway. I think DJ is the best overall play, safest play among those top 4. All right, so I mentioned players that miss the cut one week, bounce back and have a good week. hoping for that from Scott Piercy. I mean, he is one of the better course fits in the field, top 15 in the field. We know it. It's pretty much, this week is pretty much an extension of last week, just a lot tougher course and a lot more stressful. That's why the next player that I'm going to touch on, I'm really worried about, but we're focusing on Scott Piercy here. But keep that in mind on the next play because you'll get it. His recent form, we do worry about that miscut, but before that, Scott Piercy was dominating. He was just making a ton of cuts, playing well. The only problem last week was Scott Piercy couldn't putt. If he was able to putt, he probably would have had a top 30 finish. So with good course history and a T45 last year in the U.S. Open, I think Scott Piercy is going to be a great 7K option. And instead, if you're at that 7, I stopped at the 7K range a lot just because of the good options that are there. Because of someone like Scott Piercy, I'd much rather play him than go down, 100, 200, 300. So Scott Piercy is going to be one of those good options, I think, GPP-wise, because he could really go off and pop. He should be able to make the cut here. He should be able to bounce back. Hopefully he's not getting mentally challenged by the major. And I bring that up because this next person kind of struggles with that. All right, so Lucas Glover here. He is a mental case when it comes to big tournaments. He just cannot play well in a major or in like the Players or something like that. He just always folds, it seems like, lately. But he is one of the better stat fits in the field. He does have good course history here, so obviously he can play this course really well. And if it's going to be a fairway hitting, green hitting course, not a bogey, or you can't make bogeys, he'd be a great option. We just worry about him folding up because the pressure of playing in a major gets to him. So I do worry about that. Could you go over Xander? I'm playing him over Scott and Hideki. Yeah, so I mentioned Xander earlier. I think Xander's going to be a great option. He's going to be lower owned. He's a little bit more sneaky option. But honestly, if, let's say, Xander won a tournament and not Cantlay, their prices would be flip-flopped right now. And no one would think anything of it. So I think Xander's a great option. He did well in the last 2 U.S. Opens, so we do like that. Think about fading Spieth and Jon Rahm. Yeah, so Spieth, I'm not playing him, but I do think he makes for a good GPP option. He's one of those guys that just kind of turns up when he needs to. He can, kind of figure out ways to make the cut and play well, which is something that most players can't do. If one part of their game, even their primary part of their game, is struggling, most players can't, do something else to be able to make the cut and be able to play decent enough. And Spieth is actually one of those players that can do that. That's why he's a world-class player. All right, so do we have any more questions rolling in? About to wrap up here in a little bit. Going to go over the FanDuel plays here real quick, though. All right, let's get into the FanDuel plays. So I do think Aaron Baddeley is a little bit cheap on FanDuel. I do think Van Rooyen is too cheap on FanDuel. Chaz Reavie was the play that really stuck out for me on FanDuel, given that price range. So he does seem a little bit too cheap. Let's bring the slide up here. It's a little bit too low, cutting off the graphic. Sorry about that. All right. So I do think Reavie, he's a good stat fit. He normally plays well at the beginning of the year, so I think that's why he has good course history here. But still, hopefully he found that form recently again, so we do like that. I do think Furyk and Scott Piercy are definitely too cheap on there. So just wanted to bring that to attention there. Let's bring up the Yahoo plays now. I'm not sure how many guys actually play Yahoo. I know I have some good weeks on Yahoo. It's weird. On Yahoo, I either really have a really good week, like a top 100 finish or top 50 finish, or it's really bad, and there's really no in between. It's just something weird that I've noticed. But talking about some cheap plays on Yahoo, Thomas Pieters, $20 minimum price on Yahoo. This guy's a world-class player. He's missed one cut, okay? Now, I know he's not the best stat fit, but wow, I was shocked at this pricing when I saw this. This one really stood out to me. I couldn't believe it, really. I know he's not the biggest name in the field, and that's why he's this low, but wow, that stuck out to me. I'm not sure we have to go this low on Yahoo either because of, Scott Piercy and Jim Furyk being priced pretty low. Stenson's priced pretty low on Yahoo as well. But you look at Zach Johnson. Now, Zach Johnson, I wouldn't play him on FanDuel or DraftKings, I don't think. But at $20 on Yahoo, This is a guy that just knows what he needs to do. He thinks about his shots, and he goes out and plays them pretty well. Now, he's been struggling this whole year as well, but he's been finding ways to make cuts at these majors, so I really don't mind Zach Johnson on Yahoo specifically. And then the last one, Shane Lowry. We know the recent form that Shane Lowry is in. Great option there for you on Yahoo where he's minimum priced. Who would be the highest owned player in GPPs on DraftKings? I would guess Simpson, just because he's getting talked up. And once again, like last week, I was really shocked that he was projected to be the highest owned player. And this week, once again, he is. So, I find myself fading him a little bit more on GPPs. Obviously, I'm going to own him a lot. He makes for a great play. But it does worry me slightly how high owned he's going to be. But he's a great stat fit. Obviously, I get he's priced a little bit too low, given his recent form. I would say that Simpson, Stenson, and probably Furyk below 8K are going to be the most owned players. It's hard to know what the general public that's coming into play these majors, what they're going to be keying in on. You never know if like DJ and Brooks are going to be higher owned just because the basic fan knows that those guys have been playing really well. They won't really know that someone like Patrick Cantley's been playing well. Yeah, Matt Kuchar, if you're looking above 8K, he'll probably be the most owned player in that range. Maybe other than Hideki, I could see him being kind of a sneaky, very popular option. That kind of he's safe. He seems safe. And a lot of the times I like to do this too, obviously, is you play the safer player over the guy that's more of a tournament option. You look at Hideki or Xander. I would much rather play Hideki in cash because it's safer. Now, in GPPs, I'm definitely going to be mixing that up a little bit there. All right, any other questions here? I'm going to be wrapping up here in about 2 minutes or so. Then, as always, here is the Patreon page recap. So, been doing really well on DK. And actually, we're going to start trying to do FanDuel a little bit more. Now, there's certain weeks on certain sites where there's a really nice edge. And on FanDuel last week, there was a really nice edge. Because normally, or the last 2 weeks I've done a FanDuel lineup, I was able to get like a guy that should be 8K or would be 8K on DraftKings for a lot cheaper price. And it's pretty much I was replacing someone on, it's a FanDuel lineup, but if they're on DraftKings, I was replacing an 8 or a 7K player with someone who's 8K. So obviously that's going to be a little bit better. That's what happened the last 2 weeks on FanDuel. So I won't always do that, but when it's there and when the pricing makes sense and the structure of the lineup makes sense, I'll do that. I also do that for Yahoo as well. Haven't been able to do that recently because it just hasn't been there. So when it's there, I'll post that. And then I will be posting the top 20 plays and the player pool overall here after this video, after I get wrapped up on this live video. All right, we don't have any questions. I'm going to get wrapped up here, guys. All right, real quick before we do the sign off, let's talk about a quick question here just because I want to wrap it up. Best shows in my lifetime. I think if you got to start out, you look at when I was younger, definitely got to go with Pokemon or Rocket Power. One of those two. Definitely one of the better shows as a kid, but a little bit older on, Lost. All right, you guys tell me which show is better, Lost, How I Met Your Mother, or Entourage. Those are my top three if I had to think about it right now. Let me know in the comment section below what you guys think. All right, that's all I have for you guys. Please like and subscribe. And as always, let's keep cashing. Thanks. We out.